Well, it appears that two of our panelists must be stuck in traffic or something. So I'm going to start with it. I'm Judith Dornstein, your moderator, and I'm going to start with a couple of opening remarks rather than introducing the panelists right now. And then if they're still not here, I will introduce our panelists who are here for the moment. So coincidentally, or maybe not so coincidentally, I opened this morning's Hollywood Reporter digitally course, and it featured an article on the rise of Facebook video as a powerful distribution tool for content creators and this really is representing a really seismic shift on the online video industry where YouTube is no longer the only video platform. So not just Facebook, but Snapchat and Twitter have also introduced video platforms, and a host of other upstarts are giving creators more places for content. So MCNs, as we used to call them, represent the new multi-platform media world that's growing and transforming the underlying foundations in the media business. So it's growing so big and so fast that several of the leading digital-first video networks, formerly known as MCNs, no longer even answer to that name. They prefer the new significantly expanded label, MPN, which really makes more sense. Multi-platform network, not just multi-channels. MPN connotes mass distribution of videos across multiple distribution platforms, not just YouTube. So while these mobile, millennial-focused new media companies initially birthed and aggregated their videos as channels on YouTube, now YouTube is only one of the many. Still a very critical one, but becoming just one of many. The new multi-PM game for most is to initially build mass audiences on YouTube, but then take those audiences and monetize them off YouTube. That's why these MPNs are seeking the widest array of their video programming across the widest array of digital platforms that we've ever seen. Facebook, Snapchat, sorry, I need some water, Snapchat, Twitter, Vessel, Xbox, just to name a few, and to create a non-55-45 revenue story. In today's over-the-top video world, quality video is available anytime, anywhere, and the vast majority of video consumption is bite-sized short-form video. So MPNs actually expand the traditional platforms rather than supplant them, and they enable consumers to consume the full spectrum of entertainment and news on the mobile platform, all of which we're going to talk about today. And hopefully our other panelists will get out of traffic and arrive. We have here with us today Rosanna Tesla-Freed. She is Vice President of Business and Legal Affairs at Fullscreen. This is a global youth media company that develops online creators and produces multi-platform entertainment experiences, where her primary focus is working on the exciting new initiatives of creating original content to help creators grow their brands and bring their passion projects to life. Prior to joining Fullscreen, Rosanna worked in the traditional media space in TV and film production at Constantine Film and 20th Century Fox. To her left is Peter Morris. Peter was ranked by the Jewish Defense League as Hollywood Mensch. You should invite over for Shabbat dinner before the end of 2015. So if Perry Mason and Atticus Finch had a baby, it wouldn't be nearly as loyally as the Vice President of Business Affairs and Development at Funny or Die, Peter Morris. We're very fortunate today because he couldn't make it last year, but he did this year. Tom Zadra is with us. Tom has spent more than 15 years working in traditional and digital media, and he's currently Executive Vice President at Relativity Digital Studios, where he oversees the business side of the studios made for digital productions. Just prior to that, Tom was head of business development for video at Yahoo, And before that, he ran business and legal affairs for Netflix's Red Envelope Entertainment, their first foray into original content. Prior to that, Tom was vice president of business affairs at Miramax Films. I am Judith Dornstein. I myself am a transactional entertainment attorney for, I hate to say it, close to 40 years already. I started out in a record company, United Artists Records, and then as an associate, a firm named Capital Livingston, was then a partner in Bushkin, Copelson Games and Gains, and then had two other partnerships with my name in them. And finally, in 95, started my own boutique law firm. So I represent actors and writers and producers, directors, musicians, songwriters, as well as independent production companies in both film and TV, doing both scripted and non-scripted work. And in the digital world, most recently, I've done agreements for the president of a digital radio station and for an actor-producer of the popular game on YouTube channels, the Mosh Games. So having said that, hopefully Chris Riley, who's general counsel of Machinima, will arrive, and as well as Alan Friel, who is a partner at Baker Hostetler. But until then, we'll just go forward with our panel and cover the same information. So if you guys want to move over or not, yeah, sure, why not? We'll just confuse everybody.
We can also pretend
Stuck with us.
for those guys.
Absolutely, yeah. We can say anything we want about Machinima now. Or not, if it's, yeah.
We can figure this out.
Yeah. This is the comedy portion of the
Listen,
show.
I'm
I mean-
happy. It's my pleasure to play the role now.
There you go.
Well, you are a funnier guy, right?
Okay.
You're the least funny person in the building.
Yeah. So I know I gave a very brief overview, but would each of you tell our audience a little bit more about what each of you do at your respective companies, starting with Rosanna?
Okay. As Judith said, that we're a global youth media company that focuses on the creator. And I brought a really cool video to show you guys, but ironically, Digital Hollywood and working in a digital company, I can't get it on the screen. So you'll have to go to our website to check it out, fullscreen.com. But we have various parts of our business. Our MCN side, we have 600 million subscribers with more than 5 billion video views across all of our global network each month. The network includes 65,000 creators. That includes Grace Helbig, who many of you may now know. If you didn't know online, she has her own. She has moved over to the traditional side of media. She now has her own show on E, which we're really excited for her about. We have the Fine Brothers, Devin Supertramp, Andrea Russett, Lohan Fiddy, Jack and Jack, and many others. This reach only reflects the YouTube numbers. We expand beyond that into Vine, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, and the list goes on as the platforms are continuing to be created. Part of our network is that we help talent develop their channel, their platform. We have all types of proprietary content ID and content licensing opportunities to figure out their revenue stream. Also, we set them up with the business-to-business part of our business, which is integrated marketing opportunities, which is a huge opportunity across many, many platforms. We also work directly with businesses and top brands in maintaining their YouTube channels. From the consumer side, we are excited about our new original content that we are creating with many partners. We are going to be releasing a couple of new features, O2L Forever, which is a docufollow of the now defunct O2L YouTube group that was a huge following, and our first feature film, The Outfield, which is due out this summer, and will be featured digitally. We also last year had an exciting year where we acquired Rooster Teeth, which is one of the original YouTube-based platform companies, its own channel, around for 13, 14 years. They wrapped their first film called Laser Team, many other productions, big gaming company, as well as Screw Attack. which is another gaming company, and we were ourselves partnered up with Otter Media, which is a joint venture between the Churning Group and AT&T. A lot of new exciting ventures going on with that partnership. So we're really excited about building this new generation of content.
Wow, what do you do in your spare time? Okay.
So, yeah, I'm Tom Zadra. I work at Relativity Digital, which is a relatively, at least in this incarnation, new division of Relativity Media. So there's the film side, the television side. Partnership with the sports agency, partnership with the fashion agency, all sorts of things. So we are, our approach is to make feature-length films intended for initial digital distribution, casting, social influencers as well as traditional talent. And we just announced this morning our first one, which wrapped last week. It actually has a full screen YouTube star in it. So that's our angle. We're approaching this is, in a way, it's sort of like indie filmmaking was, a while ago. These are, real budgets, but for digital, but fairly, not big budgets for feature films. And the talent brings a lot to the table as far as not just their abilities to not just act, they all produce and edit film now and all this stuff, but to market the film. We lean on them heavily for that, and as well as traditional sort of, we'll look more traditional P&A. So that's us.
I'm Peter Morris, and I work at Funny or Die. Just out of curiosity, how many of you guys know what Funny or Die is? Wow, that's better than in most rooms, so that's good to hear. Well, just very briefly, most people think Funny or Die is 4 guys working at Will Ferrell's garage. And we generally like them to think that. But we've got about 140 full-time employees and about 60 everyday, all-day freelancers with offices in LA, San Francisco, and New York. We're predominantly known for making high-level celebrity one-off videos on our own site and through our own digital channels. We also use YouTube and many other outlets, including Yahoo and other digital distributors as well. We are the #1 brand on social media with, I think, about 35 million followers across the board in aggregate on 16 different platforms. We are one of the original groups that started to work to put together branded entertainment deals many, many years ago. We're now 8 years into doing this, and that is creating not an integration, not a sponsorship, but a custom piece of comedic content in and around a brand's services or products. When I started there just under 5 years ago, we had 1 television show. I think we now have 23. We have done a couple of feature films. We've had a clothing line in JCPenney. We have the world's largest comedic festival. It's called the Funny or Die Oddball Comedy and Curiosity Festival. It is in 20 cities in the US at all venues of 18,000 people or more outside. And it is sort of Lollapalooza for comedy. So we are trying to do everything we can in the comedy space and make it fit our unique style and our brand and entertain people. So that's sort of what we do at Funny or Die.
And I want to welcome Alan Friel. He is a partner at Baker Hostetler, where he represents clients in media advertising and e-commerce industries on transactional, regulatory, and intellectual property matters. He's also an adjunct professor at UCLA and LMU. And Alan, what would you tell the audience a little bit more about what you do on an everyday basis?
Sure. Well, basically, is this on? Everyone hear me? For lack of a better word, an evolving media lawyer. So it's the IP side of it. It's regulatory, including privacy and data security, which have become increasingly more important. I've done a number of MCN deals and over-the-top television deals over the years. Probably the most recent, noteworthy thing our firm is doing is, has anyone followed the Free Play Music case? So Free Play Music is our client. They have a large music library, and they provide, part of their business model is if you are a small content creator and you would like to license the music for free, you can do so as long as you don't commercialize it. And if you distribute it via YouTube, you have to give Free Play the content ID so that they can commercialize it. A number of MCNs are distributing content created by individual creators with those non-commercial licenses. Machinima is one that we're in litigation with.
Is that why he's not here?
And there are others. And the issue there is that the MCN has the content ID. And so the license from Free Play's perspective is being breached. And so we're in a copyright infringement case with a number of the MCNs right now. And that has a lot of interesting issues, including sort of the scope of Digital Millennium Copyright Act safe harbor, which you're probably familiar with. I can talk about it more, but basically it means that someone like YouTube that is merely displaying user-generated content at the direction of the user with very limited control can operate a notice and take down if that user has posted content that is infringing on the site. And so one of the questions is going to be, when you have an intermediary that is basically a programmer that is running the content both on their own network and then distributing it off of other platforms like YouTube, do they or do they not qualify for that safe harbor?
Yeah. I'm interested, though, since the audience didn't know about that, I take it we don't have any attorneys here at all, or not? So most of the
That's
audience,
great, by the way.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Terrific. So how many of you produce for traditional television? Ah, okay. And for traditional film? One. Okay. Oh, two. And then the rest of you do produce for the digital platforms? Or only a couple? Okay, I'm missing what everybody else does then. Music? No. Okay, we're just trying to see who our audience is. How would a creator decide between building a YouTube channel or becoming part of one that already exists? Can somebody address that?
Rosanna, is there-
I can address that.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just basic idea of just YouTube being, I know a lot of people talk about it being this huge black hole of content. I mean, what's going on right now is that back to what you were saying about the multi-platform networks, there is so many pipes out there right now, which is great for content creators. But in terms of the consumer, it's a lot of content, and especially on YouTube, it's hard to find that content. So sometimes for somebody who's coming into the space now, I think that collaborating, and we really promote that at Fullscreen, collaborating with existing channels, existing subscribers. You have a couple million followers. Yes, it takes a long time to get to that place, but if you can just plug in with somebody, whether it's in the comedic space or the music space, or somebody that's an up and coming filmmaker that you can kind of plug into existing channel is really great, and definitely something that as an traditional MCN we would promote for our creators.
So basically, in the same vein, do you think the economics of YouTube works, or are there alternatives for multi-platform networks, really?
Just on from my point of view, or my new point of view on this job, like, we look at the YouTubers as we're one way they can make money outside of YouTube, right? They make plenty of money doing brand deals and ads on their YouTube channels and other social media, but by featuring them really and building films around them, it's a new opportunity. It's something that they might have an interest in the career path, but obviously they're getting paid for that, and it's just another path. So the YouTube, no one wants to give up their YouTube channel, obviously, but I think less and less people look at that as a way to to make most of their
So
money.
relativity
Yeah.
would be another outlet for them.
Well, I think Tom brings up a really good point. It's the idea that the value that you get from YouTube is there are people who are making money with display ads on YouTube and with pre-roll, but predominantly you're making money through introductions to brands, and MCNs provide that certainly for their highest content creators. And it's the core marketplace for all of your fans. So you want to keep that. It's robust, it's valuable, especially when you're wanting to promote other projects that may be off YouTube. And that's where, in working with somebody like Relativity or working with somebody like Funny or Die, we're getting involved with someone that has got some hands and feet in more traditional media, as well as can lend you some exposure in different channels to then leverage that audience. It becomes very important. So that, I think, is where we'll start to see a lot more money made. It's the ability to incubate your brand and who you are on YouTube, and then galvanize those people in a call to action to somewhere else, where you own and control more of your IP, or you have a better deal, or it can get to be on a bigger stage and scale.
So
One of my favorite things about digital is it's brutally honest, and these people are called influencers, right? They're just trying to build up, like, I can make people make purchasing decisions and other decisions, and and monetize that.
Right. And from the original content perspective, if you're looking to plug in social influencers, they've got to influence. So they have to keep up their YouTube channel. They have to keep up their Vine, their Instagram, their Snapchat. It's a constant discussion and interaction, engagement with their audience. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have been able to get their content made in a long form way. So that's a really important element, and doesn't necessarily replace the YouTube channel, but it's just part of the marketing package, I would say.
right, so it's multi-platforms, like we were
That's
talking
right.
about in the very beginning.
On the brand
yeah.
integration, I think one thing that's worth mentioning when we talk about traditional product placement or brand integration, as opposed to influencers reviewing something or endorsing it, or even speaking about it in a positive note. When you see a television commercial and you see a celebrity on it, you know that they're getting paid for it. So there's no need to disclose anything. A brand integration, depending upon the context, may or may not be apparent to the consumer that person is getting paid or getting something of value to talk about the product or the service. I think we probably all know at this point, if Kim Kardashian is tweeting something, she's getting paid. But other influencers putting something on their YouTube channel, tweeting something, not so obvious, right? And so the Federal Trade Commission has said, through its endorsement and testimonial guide updates a number of years ago, that both the brand and the influencer have an obligation to make sure that if anything of material value has been given, even a free product to review, a free DVD or a platform game disc, even a sample of hand cream, that has to be disclosed. And the reason why is that we usually think of these influencers as objective, sort of like a reporter, or sort of like one of our family members. And if I'm going to buy a new digital camera, I'm going to call my brother because he's a geek about that stuff. And his opinion is going to mean a lot more to me than watching a Minolta commercial. But if my brother was getting free cameras from Minolta, then maybe I would be a little more skeptical of his recommendation. So that's the concept of that.
Right.
I hope he'd give you a free camera.
So a lot of people with blogs who do reviews of products or even movies or what have you, if they're getting, or restaurants or whatever it is, if they're getting something in return, it doesn't necessarily have to be money, but a free something or other.
Yeah, I just want to add, it's incredibly complicated and complex to do that. I mean, how do you make that disclosure in 140 characters or less on Twitter? What do you do in an Instagram? I mean, how do you make these disclosures? Again, it's a lot of fun to sort of figure these things out, but people, you're starting to see things that become industry standard across the board, but we're still trying to figure all that stuff out right now.
Yeah.
You also have brands that are paying for content. So it's not necessarily that they're featured in the piece. One of our initiatives is something called Snapper Hero, which is on Snapchat, which is fully funded by AT&T. And there's a thing at the end that says AT&T, but if you watch the show on Snapchat, has nothing to do with AT&T. So it's just another way to get your financing or to get, to create original content for the different platforms.
All right, that's sort of like where's native advertising?
Right, I was just about to say.
Begin and end, as opposed to just, sponsored by in the old GE theater kind of way. Right. And so the FTC is really struggling, and as is the ad industry, of what kind of disclosure to use or how to treat something that may merely be brought to you by or sponsored by, as opposed to something where the brand has editorial control, where the product or the service is integrated into it, and it is essentially a commercial message.
Yeah. What?
I was just going to say, I think Alan's absolutely right. I mean, the term we try to use, it's sort of a dirty term, is advertainment. And that to me is the difference. So for those of you who love the Dos Equis, Most Interesting Man in the World, an advertisement is the 30-second commercial featuring the guy. An advertainment piece or a brand entertainment piece or native advertising, whatever you want to use, is an actual adventure that guy goes on that you actually want to watch. Now, it is the Dos Equis, Most Interesting Man in the World. You know that it's being there to promote Dos Equis in some certain way, but you're going to watch it. And if an entire commercial break and a show or a game is devoted to that, you're not going to change the commercial. You're not going to change the channel. You're not going to fast forward through it. It is a piece of entertainment in and of itself. It's advertainment, but it is entertainment.
So getting back to digital distribution. So what would be a creator's motivation in taking their project to digital distributors rather than traditional broadcast and cable television? And has this really shifted in the past few years? I mean, do they get greater freedom? Do they get better money or less money? Or what prompts somebody to go to digital rather than traditional road?
I would say number one, they can get it made, which is very different. And there are smaller budgets, and if you tie in their influence, you have a built-in a market for it. So it depends on the deal. Sometimes they can own a portion of the IP. They can control it a little bit more in terms of creatively speaking. It just depends who it is. It depends where it's being distributed. It depends who the partners are. So it has a lot of different factors as to why they would choose it. But I think it also depends on who the company is they're going to. From the full screen perspective, we're very much targeted towards the millennials. And so if you're looking for something that's targeted towards that generation, then you would come to us or any of the other content creators out there that are producing projects for that particular generation. So it just depends on what that creator is looking for.
So you have to know what market you're going to know which digital distributor to go to.
In a way, yes.
Yeah, I would just add one thing I've noticed in the last, I would say, even 3-4 years ago, definitely 5-6 years ago, I feel like everything I saw was the cable project that every cable network passed on, and that, frankly, that's fine a lot of times because they pass on a lot of great things. But now most pitches seem to be sort of made for digital or created with digital in mind, even if there's no business reason for it, but it's just they can tell a deeper story to millennials and just jump right into it rather than having to ease into it, or they want to talk to a certain production company or distributor because they know they have that audience. And then the other thing is, as someone who has worked on the distribution and production side of these creators, it's they bring so much. You have to be very cautious of making sure you're really offering value to them, and that value, most of the people who are getting in front of television networks and the big digital distributors don't need any more money. They're 22 and they're rich, and they're not making a small film because they're going to make a ton of money. But it's making and it's easy to cut anyone who's come out of traditional media. You're a gatekeeper, and so you want to be sure you're not just a gatekeeper because there's no fence. They can go on Kickstarter and raise $500,000 in 5 days, and make their own movie if they wanted to. You have to sort of be good to work with in the creative freedom way, in a just collaborative way, all those sorts of things. And sort of sometimes, and it's not that they couldn't do some of what you're doing, it's you've made it easy.
Yeah. I mean, I think Rosanna and Tom really hit it there. Definitely the first reason is that you want to get it made and you want to get it distributed. Before the ability to put your work on the internet, there were gatekeepers to get it out there. And now it's fully democratic. If it's good, people will see it. It's just as simple as that. If they like it, they'll send it on, they'll share it via social media. It's that simple. And there's sort of three groups that do this. There's the group that wants to build a brand, and for them, building something through an MCN can be a good experience. There are people who just want to have something to do and fun with their friends, and will do it on a one-off and post it online, or show a funny video of their kid coming back from the dentist. And then there are people who have intellectual property that they want to try out and potentially incubate and take it to bigger media. Or in Funny or Die's case, we'll add another one to that, which is working with major celebrities. And part of it for us is that these celebrities are used, even at their level, of an incredible amount of red tape to try to get something made. When they come to Funny or Die, it's very easy. We sort of hand them the keys. We pay for everything. We give them all the tools. We give them complete creative freedom across the board, and then they put it up. And for us, what's great about the internet is it's incredibly low risk and incredibly high reward. If you are in a Funny or Die video that nobody sees, the 30 or 40,000 people see, it'll be gone tomorrow. There'll be another video up on the site. If you crush it, like this Dennis Quaid freak out video, everybody will be talking about it, and you are likely to get as much acclaim for that as you have for anything else in your career. So very low risk and very, very high payout. That's another reason why people do that.
Yeah, and the business models between the two are so different, and there are variations, of course. But where I think that you probably see the starkest differentiation is between Maker Studio and the Disney television networks. All right, so now they're all in the same family. Disney television, whether it's the Disney Channel or any of the other networks, own everything. You're exclusive, including in music. And you can't really do anything. And by the way, you're also going to promote the program without any additional compensation.
So,
if you're at Maker, you're non-exclusive. You can do anything you want. You don't promote anything unless you're getting paid for it. You can merchandise your own merchandise. Can't do that at Disney. They're going to own that. And so one reason why I think we haven't seen so much crossover out of result of that tie-up is the two companies trying to figure out, okay, we've got very different talent models, very different business models. How can we work together? Where are ways that we can find common ground? But the businesses are very different.
so at Full Screen or at Funny or Die, can somebody own their own content? How does that work at your companies?
Definitely. So we have, the content that we produce ourselves, and obviously we own that. And then there are things where we'll partner with somebody on those, and sometimes we'll own it, sometimes they'll own it, sometimes we'll each own half of it. And then, of course, we host user-generated content. And anybody who posts user-generated content on our site owns the full rights to that and can exploit it along with any derivatives or ancillaries themselves without any holdback from us whatsoever. They have full and complete control. They can post a video and take it down the next day.
It's pretty much the same. User-generated content, of course, is theirs and their control. That's their authenticity of their subscribers and their audience. They come to us. It just depends on the IP. It depends if we're working with a brand, then the brand owns it. So it just depends on a lot of times who's financing it. For 100% financing it, we probably will be owning the content in full. Maybe for an exclusive period of time, maybe for a non-exclusive period of time, they can put it on their channel. So there's no one model. It depends on the creator, it depends on the project, it depends on the audience, it depends on the distribution, what platform it's going on. So there's many different iterations of this.
And at Relativity, the digital productions? are
With
they-
what we're doing, yeah, we would own them as far as owning the copyright in the film goes.
Mhm.
But our model was certainly very talent friendly as far as participating in revenues. And it's hopefully this time next year we'll have released some films. There's probably about 10 or 12 of these that are going to come out from various full screen and others that are
Mhm.
producing similar content. We'll all be able to say this isn't like the typical nonsense Hollywood participation. The costs are very low, so and the audiences are big, so there's real money there.
Yeah, that's actually an exciting part of the participation. I came from Fox where the back end was something like 50 plus pages, and now it's one page. It's
Wow.
really clear
Mhm.
what goes in the pot, what comes out, and it's all about everybody being able to make as much money as possible off of it, and in terms of, and also building the brand of the creator, because the creator is more central to the process than it ever was before. I think it's a little bit akin to TV and the writers having more opportunities, being the showrunner. It's similar in that way, that the creators have a little bit more control and more opportunity over their content. And I think a lot of it has to do with that they create their brand versus a studio or network creating them and hiring them into their existing network or distribution.
And from your prior experience at Amazon, did they work like that also?
I was at Yahoo, but
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that.
it depended.
Do you want to be at Amazon?
Yeah, I mean,
No.
we were.
Oh, okay.
It depended on the project. There's, again, it's everyone's doing. These companies are doing 10 different sort of business models. So for the stuff that Yahoo produced day in day out, yeah, they owned it. For the bigger sort of celebrity driven projects that they weren't fully financing, they didn't own. They were a distributor for those that they were fully financing.
Yeah, we did some deals with Yahoo, and it was, again, each deal was sort of different. But I think the takeaway for you guys, especially as content creators for this stuff, is windowing is really important. So the idea that you produce something and then you license it to someone else, or they help you finance it, and you put it in one place for a moment and you try to generate some revenue there, and then you move that target. And that's what I think a lot of people are experimenting with now. You'll go to a full screen where they'll help you finance 60 or 80% of your cost, and then they get, let's say, whatever their exclusive window is, whether it's 90 days or 6 months, it doesn't really matter what it is. And then you can either license that in international territories, you can sell it to Netflix or to Amazon or to different buyers in different areas. And that, I think, is really important. And, one quick example of this is we did a movie a couple of years ago called I, Steve. Our guys wanted to make fun of the fact that Hollywood was trying to ramp up, 4 or 5 Steve Jobs biopics, and we wanted to do a fake trailer. And somebody said, well, why don't we make the actual movie? We thought it was the dumbest idea imaginable, so we greenlit it immediately. This was a Tuesday afternoon at 4 o'clock. Wednesday morning, they had a full feature-length script. We gave them $50,000. They cast it on Wednesday, shot Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, posted on Monday and Tuesday, and it was up on the site on Wednesday. It starred Justin Long as Steve Jobs, and we had Jorge Garcia from Lost as Steve Wozniak, and Michaela Watkins as Melinda Gates, and then a bunch of working comedians that you'd see on The Big Bang Theory and some other shows of that ilk. And we put it up on our site. We had no idea how it was going to do. It did, I think, 1.7 million views in the first couple of days. We then moved it to Hulu Plus, where people who had subscriptions were watching it, and we got a rev share from that. We then sold hard DVDs and Blu-rays on Amazon. We then did a license with Netflix for a period of time. And once you add all of these things up, you're making quite a good amount of money. And our exclusivity with Netflix is now ended, and we're probably going to start looking at licensing it to different television networks as they're trying to, get a piece of content to coincide with these real Steve Jobs movies that are going forward. So again, it was made for $50,000 in 8 days. And, at the end of several years, we will have done, considerably more than 10x that. So again, I think it's important for you as digital creators to understand how these models can work in your benefit. And if you can keep the cost of production low, then utilizing these different spaces and these different places can really generate some meaningful revenue.
Wow, that's a huge difference with the digital world, because you have multi-distribution in different platforms, multi-platform networks. And You don't have that in traditional TV, at least you never used to. So talking about the money involved in this, how, if any of you can tell us, are the budgets different in producing for digital? And we've sort of touched on it in terms of getting help from the content producer, getting help from some of these channels and some of these distribution outlets. Do they have to raise the rest of the money in another way, or how exactly do the budgets work, and are they much less than traditional TV?
Much less.
Much less.
It's pretty easy.
Emphasis on the
They're
much.
lower.
Yes.
They are lower.
We're talking really low
extremely
budget.
low
Uh-huh.
and scrappy, and they do it,
Mhm.
and it's good content. Look, it doesn't differ that much.
Mhm.
We were talking about this before from traditional media. The difference now is the distribution. There's a lot of platforms, there's a lot of distribution, there's a lot of pipes out there to get this content out on, and it's not going to be $200 million in box office or something like insane like that. So you have to look kind of conservatively at your numbers and see what you can return based on the windowing and licensing out down the line. And that model is changing every single day. We're building models based on information that's not out there, that we're guessing. And they're educated guesses by really smart people with MBAs. But it's still all a guess. But you definitely want to keep it low. And that kind of, for us, especially gearing towards millennials and the younger generation, is also more authentic. You don't need to have this huge production and, and all these CGI and all that other stuff. That's not the business we're in at the moment. That may change. But it's all about getting the stories out there, getting the right creators out there, and getting on the platforms that they're interested in watching it on. So it may be a short form, 2-minute thing on Snapchat. It may be a few second video on Vine. It may be longer form on to buy off of iTunes or HX or on Vessel or on YouTube. So it just depends on the content, but I will say it's a lot lower.
Yeah, on our side, we compared to what they're spending on the feature side of our company, it's much less. But you can only make a film for so cheap. So we have, real budgets. They're still, they fairly modest. But I think that to pile on there, like one thing we talk about is that it doesn't look too good, because like people, that it doesn't look too glossy and too studio, and we talk about, when do people need to know we're involved? Should they know we're involved, or does that take away from some of the authenticity and those kinds of things?
If somebody self-produces something, does a couple of minutes on Vine or Snapchat or something like that, do any of you look at that to see if that's a project that you'd like to expand for your company? Or
Sure. I mean, one of the best things about the internet space on any of these platforms is incubation. So whether you see somebody who's terrific at doing Vines, or Vines are, a 7-second video, and the ultimate artist medium is the Funny or Die April Fool's Day dips, 1.5 seconds, the ultimate artist medium. Again, I think it can be terrific to incubate content, or it can be there to help build your brand and then take your brand and galvanize them to move somewhere else. But that's what's fascinating. It's not just YouTube. It's not just about video anymore. It's about Instagram and Vine and Facebook. And for instance, if any of you have seen the new Fast and the Furious movie, or you've seen any of the articles about it, one of the most fascinating pieces as to why it's grown so rapidly is due to the social media presence of the cast. Vin Diesel has something like 93 million Facebook followers. And Universal, in doing his deal, will pay him a tidy sum on top of his fee for the movie to promote the movie on his Facebook channel and to release exclusive content through that medium, because it's the target area for the fans of that movie. So all of these people who have their platforms and have their brands, or can incubate content in a place and then take a derivative somewhere else, it's extremely valuable. It doesn't matter what platform it's on, whether it's Snapchat, whether it's Vine, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Dips.
Was that behind Funny or Die's decision to do the angry actor that came up
That
Was
was
it 2
just-
weeks ago?
That was just fun.
Oh,
That was
okay.
quite thing. That was just fun. But
Was
you
he
know,
promoting a movie or something? Or
no,
Yeah.
it was just a regular Funny or Die video. But you know, we have turned several of our pieces into television shows, and we are
Mhm.
getting ready to do that with some films. One of my favorite shows that we have incubated and turned into a very successful television show is, if any of you have seen either the old videos or the show on Comedy Central, Drunk History. And for those of you, thank you. For those of you that have seen it, it's a very simple concept. We get a comedian absolutely for real drunk out of their mind, and they have read a packet of history about an event, and then they regale us with their tale of the event. And we have A-list celebrities who mouth along in a reenactment of what the drunk person is saying. And it's Drunk History, and it's spectacular. And we did it for our website for years, and now it's one of Comedy Central's hit shows. So again, I think it's very valuable. It's difficult to take something, repackage it, and put it on television, or shoot something digitally and then repackage it in a movie. But it's great to incubate a concept and then create a derivative for those areas if that's what you want to use the web for.
So
It's
that's
also
the-
great to see these content creators, or just these creators in general, see what they're like. I mean, you don't have to invest in them right away without seeing anything. They're not coming in with just an idea. They're
Mhm.
coming in with just enormous amount of videos that they've already done on their own, which is scrappy and low budget, and that they've done in their bedroom or with their friends, and they've put it together. So that gives you a nice kind of outlook as to what they can do as a producer, director, writer, or what have you. So that's a nice thing too, is for us as people financing it and helping to make it, we can actually see what they've made so far and what the engagement has been by their followers, because they comment on it. So it's certainly not going to be exactly the same thing when it's turned into longer form content or on TV, or if it goes linear or whatever, but it definitely gives you an insight that I think is unique to this area.
So a creator now has been recognized by one of you, and he's ready to make the deal because you're so fascinating by what he's done on the other channels. So what are some of the major issues and deal points that come up in digital deals that are unique to digital deals, or are they very similar to the more traditional TV, which I doubt it, but what are the major points that come up that you have to negotiate in digital deals?
I'll start off. I mean, for us, one of the things that's always challenging, and we have, we usually will probably hopefully have brands offsetting the cost of everything we do, whether you notice it or not. Probably, hopefully not. But these social influencers, they don't need you as much as in the sense that like everyone wants to be an actor on something. Like some of them do, some of them don't. They already have brand relationships. Their MCNs already have brand relationships. So it's a very tricky and specific negotiation around what they'll do, what they won't do, how many times, and just educating yourself. We all kind of lump this in as social media, but if you're someone who does it, Vine is very different from Instagram, is very different. They use them for different purposes and building their brands, and it's taking the time to do things that frankly sometimes sound like, I can't believe that I'm like arbitraging tweets for a living or something. It's like, it's insane, but it matters. And when you're relying on them to essentially be most of the promotion for your project, you have to work it out. So that's always that's a challenge.
The promotion is definitely.
So is there a lot of discussion about the budget and about credits and things that more traditional TV discusses?
Yeah, I mean, yes, all that stuff comes into play, but it's a lot of what Tom said. Again, it's about working with these people and why they're successful and where they are, and you want to harness that and have that help your project, not try to defeat it or compete with it. So I think it just depends on what it is you're doing together. A lot of these people, as Tom was saying, they may or may not be interested in making a movie or doing a TV show. Maybe they are a makeup person who's on an MCN and they talk about makeup tips, and they're really looking for that Neutrogena face wash sponsorship for TV commercials. And that's their thing. So if you're trying to put them in a movie or you're putting them in a web series, again, it's all about what they want to do, and whether it's their idea or your idea, whether you're coming together to do something, when you're talking about derivatives, but it's much simpler. I mean, Tom, you can confirm this, but every single deal that we do at Funny or Die, if we're in control of the deal, it won't be more than 5 pages, because I believe if it's more than 5 pages, you shouldn't do it. I mean, I think you can do anything in 5 pages.
I'm trying, but unfortunately, our head of business affairs, who happens to be my wife, is winning
Good
the
luck with
argument.
that.
Well, when we did some deals at Yahoo, you'll remember they were 5 pages or less. And I'll help with the other thing, although I'm not sure I'll be successful, but I'll help. So again, I think it's about keeping it simple. It's being transparent. It's recognizing that you're in an emerging medium where everybody should share in success and they should feel good about the deal. It's sort of the anti-Hollywood, if you will. There isn't BS Hollywood accounting. You know, as Rosanna brought up, you know, the back end definitions are a paragraph, you know,
So
half a page at best.
Is the back end a participation in the ad revenue, or where is the revenue coming from?
It can be. For us, it generally isn't for us. It's generally for us when we're partnering with somebody either to help produce their project that then they will own. And what we get out of it is having that exclusively on Funny or Die and helping them incubate it, and then they can take it and run with it. Or it's us helping them develop something, create it, incubate it, and then they want the value of Funny or Die and its brand name and its track record in those traditional media areas to bring it in for a sale. So for us, it's generally not that like that. But for Rosanna, if you
Well,
wanna-
yeah, does
Right,
full
I mean-
screen pay a more traditional fee to the creator or not?
You mean in the
the
fixed side
deal.
or the participation side?
Well, both.
Yeah.
The creator.
Well, the
I mean,
fixed side is, I mean, just it's based on the budget. Like I said, they're usually scrappy budgets, so it just depends on what we can afford. And everybody, again, you're saying it's very transparent. Everybody is working on the budget together. Nothing is secret. We're trying to make the best content that we can make for that price and keep it authentic, keep it relevant to their audience. I mean, that's a really big part of their brand. Like you said, they can do it on their own, on their channels and platforms, and they come to us because they want maybe to grow their audience or to go to people that are not necessarily followers. It's outside their subscribers. So everything would probably basically would go into that pot. There's licensing fees, there's merchandising. You know, you need to recoup the cost depending on who's paying for it and where the money's coming from. But it's traditional in the sense that pretty much everything goes in the pot, but there isn't, you know, these ridiculous fees and costs and things baked in that are trying to kind of be a little bit sneaky in terms of where the money is going. It's the cost is the cost, and the cost distributes the cost, and you see what is left over, and then you get a percentage of that. So it's actually quite basic waterfall, and we try to be very transparent with our creators.
So
I was just going to add, like, what you sort of echo one thing that's important is to just make sure you understand what your partner in it wants and why they're doing it, because we all assume it's money and that it's screen time and this, and it's to Peter's point, it's not always. We just went through a thing where we had a huge YouTube star and we wanted to get her on our film, and we wrote a part for her, and we, you know, gave the song and dance, and she's like, well, that's great, but I don't, you know, I'm interested in costume designing. Can I just hang out with your costume designer for a couple of weeks? And like, and none of us had bothered to ask her, you know, like, why are you interested in doing this? So.
Well, that actually kind of segues into my next question about what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced in trying to make a digital deal? I know in like the music business, we used to have crazy writers where you had to pick out a certain number of the M&Ms that were brown or something like that. I mean, do you run into really problems with some of these people who have become well-known?
Only the
digital-
ones that have momagers and dadagers.
Any war stories from some of the most difficult challenges you've had in a deal?
I personally haven't seen the difficulty that I've seen with the really huge celebrities I used to work with when I was in traditional media. So that just may be my personal observation so far. I think the only big thing is them wanting to know how they're going to be promoting this, how often. Are they, you know, spending their entire day like tweeting and vining and Instagramming and Facebooking, and, you know, I mean, it is a lot for them. They're doing their own channel. They have a lot of different things going on. And the big thing is also that they're not exclusive to us, which is definitely the case, because they have to be, if they're making such a little amount of money, they have to be off doing their own thing as well. So that's something that comes up, and where it's going to live and can it go on their channel. So those are the issues, but I wouldn't say it's high maintenance or anything like that. Sometimes it's difficult because you're dealing with teenagers, but that's just teenagers. It has nothing to do with them, being in this space.
And are you noticing any big trends in the digital space of certain types of programming that are more preferred now over others?
Gaming is huge.
Gaming
Gameplay,
has
yeah.
always been huge.
Huge.
Yeah.
I think the biggest trend you're starting to see is advertisers are sort of looking for 360-degree opportunities. It's not just about a commercial or a 30-second spot or one video. It's one video that has an on-site activation at a festival for something that then they can show in the showroom for their car company. They then can get some Snapchat videos in that environment, to then having some Vines, and then having social media pushes on Facebook and Instagram and on Twitter. So it's this entire digital universe. And as Tom was sort of alluding to, in all of these places, you used to, when it was very early, be able to just repurpose content. You just cut it down and you put 6 or 7 seconds on Vine and call it a day. If you want to be successful in all these different media now, you need to create content specifically that's intended to do well under the rules on that particular platform. And it's difficult. So I think that's the biggest trend, is that's what advertisers are looking for. And on the deal making side, with one-offs with regular people, it's not hard. I mean, there's nothing that's really contentious, because as we're talking, it's very transparent, it's very easy, and it's just, what do people want? And you either can work it out or you can't. It's very easy.
Right.
On the brand side, it's more difficult because they're always wanting these broader arrays of value. And then when you're working with people who've had a lot of success in their traditional media areas and they're moving to digital, that is a little bit of a rude awakening, because all of the things that come in the accoutrement that come with traditional media generally don't come with working on the digital side. Now you get no red tape, you get to control your budget, you sort of get the freedom of creativity and the knowing that it's going to be distributed. But you don't get things like, I still laugh when an entertainment lawyer says, well, I got to make sure my client has a private dressing room at your office.
Right.
And I laugh, and it's like, well, I mean.
And your own makeup person, your own hair person.
Yeah, right. And my response is like, the bathroom at Funny or Die is really nice. You can just close the door. I mean, that's fine. So I think that there is some difficulty when you are working with people who haven't been in that space before. And when you're asking celebrities to work in the digital space, and they're not doing it for a lot of money, or in many cases, no money, you're creative in sort of how you phrase these things. You give them the understanding of, if it's something they're excited about and it's something they want to do, they'll do more than you ever dreamed that they would do. Once you start putting the hammer down and drilling down on specifically what it is they have to do, that's when you run into problems, because then all of a sudden they don't want to do it.
Right.
So I think those are the problems.
I would just expand and say that a lot of these creators, they've become extremely sophisticated and have sophisticated representation. I mean, the major agencies, major law firms are representing them. A lot of it is the younger people within those agencies and law firms, because they're not really making that much money at this point, but they recognize this is where the industry is going. So they have to tag on very early. And it is a challenge dealing with them, because they're used to very different rich deals with lots of perks that aren't part of this process anymore.
There are a million more questions, but I wanted to give the audience a few minutes to ask any questions that they have. Does anybody have questions for the panelists? Yeah, gentleman here, and then this lady.
The promise of a digital universe for a digital immigrant, as opposed to a digital native, is the potential of cross-generational programming. And that was really an issue because of different aesthetics, priority of linear, non-linear, content. Have you seen any development? Because I think the big successes have been the cross-generational ones, rather than the traditional movie or the traditional advertising, which is aimed at a niche market, age group. Have you seen any development in this? Because I think a lot of our content people here are digital immigrants, so coming into the digital native universe. What have you seen in that development, and how do you see that going in terms of the future?
You mean literally different age demographics when you say cross generation?
I think that the key, to me, the promise of the digital universe is the ability to communicate with both than individual generation. So how does somebody who has that knowledge of that older generational element wanting to become content providers for the digital natives in a way that also deals with their aesthetics, their concerns, their issues, and their viewing habits?
I mean, just my 2 cents. I mean, creatively, we are sort of always looking at, a lot of scripts you see, a lot of projects you get pitched are kind of just thinly disguised. This person is themselves and behind the scenes of being a social media person. And, is that actually just purely from a business proposition rather than what I want to watch it? Does that make more sense than, hey, let's just make good content that might be traditional stories and features or even remakes of things and mix and sort of stunt cast these people into it so they bring their audience, which I think is that angle you're talking about. Yeah.
Well, I'm really thinking more about not personality driven material, that's age specific, but I'm talking about content that can somehow bridge the gap between the interests and concerns of different generations that find a new aesthetic on this particular device. Just like television created a new aesthetic for movies. Do you see any development in that area? It seems to be more personality driven rather than in terms of maybe context driven, giving people a kind of a larger universe to deal with, not just in terms of the identification of a personality or following that personality, but really the specific content, the meaning, the values, the belief systems that these things are coming about. Do you see any of that coming into this particular explosion of digital content?
It's a tough question to answer. I don't think in the way that you are phrasing it. And the reason is people like what they like. There's a reason why, we all joke that CBS's audience is going to die in the next 4 or 5 years. And again, they cater to a certain audience, and full screen caters to a different audience. And the difficulty is what you're talking about is a piece of content that bridges all those gaps.
Yeah.
It's sort of the universal why My Big Fat Greek Wedding works with everybody, because everybody who has any connection to any minority immediately grabs onto that movie because it's like, oh my God, that's my family. Oh wait, that's my family. But it's really, really hard to have that kind of piece of content. And on the digital side, it can work, but I'm not sure that it's any different than anything else.
Well,
If
I
it's
think
a
it's
good
also-
piece of content, it'll cross.
Wasn't there Lisa Kudrow who had webisodes that then eventually became so
Web
popular?
therapy.
So there are little short pieces that people get involved in.
Yeah,
But
I
not
think
a
there's
grand
definitely a
And
crossover.
then it
Yeah.
went to traditional TV after
Well,
that.
I think there's
one
definitely
area
crossover.
where it does work, and it's been particularly successful in digital, is cause storytelling.
Mhm.
And it's generally sponsor driven. So take an example of anyone want to see Daniel's story. So yeah, see someone there.
Here's
So
one.
this was a HP and Intel funded project where some tinkers, maker types figured out a way to make prosthetic limbs with a 3D printer. Flew down to Somalia, into the war zone, taught the people in the hospital there how to use these, how to fix them, put them on, and shot a series of short videos based on it, very heartfelt, and then we're able to leave with people have the equipment, they're able to do it themselves, tons of attention. I think that's the kind of thing that could be cross-generational.
Great storytelling will continue to cross bounds. And with the internet, you can reach a lot more people, especially with things like
and
that.
it's starting to your point, like there were a handful of MCNs. Now everything's becoming more niche, right?
Mhm.
And so there's the millennials and then the Gen Zs now, and it's going to go the other way too, based on and there's food and fashion, all that stuff based on different older demos and different interests amongst those demos. I think it's a huge opportunity because there's less barriers of sort of movies now are all big movies are made for 9-year-olds. There's nothing to see, or it's hard to get access to stuff that's even for 30, 40, 50-year-olds.
Yeah.
But my dad, who turned 75 on Saturday, he watches more. He's never going to go to a movie theater because it's a pain for him. has never watched so much content because he watches online, thinks it's great. So it's an opportunity for someone to start an MCN. I think.
Yeah, and it's a great opportunity for documentarians too.
Yeah.
I just watched a 1 hour documentary on MTV last night that somebody told me about World War II and the Holocaust. That was fascinating, and I don't know if that'll find its way into theaters or not. But there's a lot of longer programming. Yeah, I think this lady was first, and then
Yeah, I would like to know what you guys consider an influencer. Is there a certain number of views that they must have on their channel to consider as such, or is there certain characteristics? I don't know how to reach out to them, or how do they reach out to you?
That's a good question.
It is a good question. I've asked that before, actually. There is no scientific number. A lot of it is just based on, because there are people that come to us that have, 20,000 followers. I mean, it's not all based on the following. It's based on the following. It's based on the engagement. It's based on their content. So we're interested in all types of creators. Our network on the MCN side has 65,000 creators. Not all of them have millions of subscribers. So you have to start somewhere. And it just depends on that particular creator. So you can start with one person and grow.
I would say on our side, because we're spend relatively significant investment, it's millions of followers. And what we're all trying to figure out, and a year from now we'll know a lot more because a lot of these films are being released quickly. It's like, there's followers, and then like, well, what does that really mean?
I don't know what are the demographics.
And there's people who have less followers, but their followers will do anything they say. There's people who have millions of followers because it's really easy to click follow and watch them once and then never again.
Yeah.
I just want to point out that's the biggest key to all this stuff. Digital, brand related, anything, it's engagement. It's not the eyeballs. It's not about how many people view your stuff anymore. How many, the old terminology, how many hits did you get? That just doesn't really matter anymore. It's the level of engagement.
Right.
If you have 300,000 people who watch your video versus somebody else who has 3 million, but your 300,000 go shout it from the rooftops on every social media channel, and they're leaving comments and they're sharing it, that's much more valuable than the 3 million. So it's about the quality of the engagement, if you will.
And the creators themselves engaging in the discussion with their viewers, because that's the authenticity part as well, is that this generation, younger generation, really wants to feel connected to the person that's making the content.
This lady here and then that gentleman.
You just talked about your creators wanting different things, and I'm just sort of curious for each of you, what would be your definition of success with one of your star projects?
That's a really, really good question. And
To which we don't have an answer.
I mean, it's hard to answer because I think that some of the reasons that you see a lot, why the traditional media groups didn't get involved in the digital side in these kinds of ways is that it's hard for them to measure success. If you have a video that's a one-off that you get a sponsor for, and that sponsor pays $350,000 and it costs you $80,000 to make the video, and then the video gets several million views and it causes that sponsor or advertiser to come back, I would categorize that as a success. To a traditional media company who's used to doing a $5 million 30-second spot, upfront deal over a napkin that they'll do in May, they're not looking at the 350,000 views like that. 350,000 for us. If you got 100,000 views on a video, but oh my God, you got 4 calls from networks who are very interested in looking at a derivative for traditional media. So the answer is, it depends specifically on who the creator is and what the project is as to how you define success. Is it helping your branding? Is it helping grow your social media? Is it just a great piece of content you're excited to be a part of? Is it a cause that you really want to support? Are you trying to help someone or give back? So again, I think there's just an infinite amount of possibilities, but I think it's very important for you as creators to put together what is a single, a double, a triple, and a home run for yourselves to understand what that is in the universe of what your projects are about.
Okay, it looks like we're out of time. Can you give a really quick question?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think is the role of motion title graphics and bumpers and those kinds of things in this medium on your channel? How important are they? Obviously, they're a way that in the past, nice sheen and professionalism was communicated.
I think, and this is personally, and it's borne out by some stuff we're pitched. You can have more of it, whether you need it or not. It just depends on the story. But people are, people who are watching a lot of things online are used to more layovers and crayons and whatever. And if it can help tell a story, it can help tell a story.
I was thinking more on either side of the show, intro into, like the women.
Oh.
That's probably more for-
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you all for attending, and we hope to see you next year.